This is Joel in Honolulu giving a private class to just 7 students. I have called this tape The Thunder of Silence. Probably you will see the reason for this. Actually, this tape contains the inner teaching of the work of the infinite way. In this tape, you have the secret of all living. You have the secret of life itself, the secret of the spiritual universe, and the secret of the so-called material universe, including its substance and formation. In it, you have the cause of all disease, accidents, sin, fear, and the handling of these subjects so that they can be eliminated from the experience of those desiring release. Unfortunately, the nature of this truth is such that only a few receive it. Actually, only a few want it or can understand it. It requires a depth of vision. It requires an earnestness and a willingness to pay close attention until the true realization dawns in consciousness. Please believe me, there are no deeper truths than you will find on this tape. Whatever there is of a hidden nature in my own understanding and unfoldment of truth, whatever I have discovered in my practice through much more than 20 years, is in this tape. Things that I cannot tell even class students. Until now, if only you will listen, if you will try to go behind the scenes a bit, try to read between the lines, try to listen with your inner ear, this recording really has all that I have desired throughout many, many years to give our students. I have been able to give it to some individually here and there. This is the first time that 7 have received it at one time. And of course, this will be the first time you are able to receive it through these recordings. The secret of the handling of error lies in knowing the nature of error. And the nature of error is summed up in one word: hypnotism. It acts like this, if you want to personalize it. Say that someone comes in here and hypnotizes you. And he says to you that that plant over there, instead of having 3 branches, has 3 snakes. And you accept that because of his hypnotic suggestion. He has control of your mind. And because you agree that they are snakes, you go the rest of the distance and you fear them. You run away from them. You even pick up a knife and want to chop their heads off. All based on the one premise that there are snakes there. Now, of course, the snakes have nothing to do with it. The appearance has nothing to do with it. Because no matter what you would do to those non-existent snakes, you still couldn't change the fact that you were going to see snakes as long as you are hypnotized. So that there is no possible way to get rid of those snakes except get unhypnotized. There is no way to get rid of your fear of snakes except to get unhypnotized. There is no way to put up your sword except to get unhypnotized. In other words, as long as the hypnosis lasts, all the rest of the picture is there, isn't it? Now then, there is no such thing as disease. There is no such thing as death. Not since the world began has one single man or woman ever died. Not since the world began has one single man or woman ever been sick. And every attempt to get rid of sickness will make two diseases grow where one was before. As they say in materia medica, as fast as they overcome malaria, they find consumption and cancer. They just about get consumption under control, there lies cancer and locomotor ataxia. And as fast as they get those under control, two more things will spring up. Why? Because the original premise is there, which is hypnotism. As long as you can be hypnotized into believing that there is a selfhood other than God in this room, you have got to believe in the birth. You have got to believe in the growth and the maturity and in the death of it. Do you follow that? The only way you can get rid of the picture is to say that there is no such person in the room, that there is only God in the room. How can you say that there is only God in the room? Well, there is only one life, and that is God. There is only one mind, and that is God. There is only one soul, and that is God. There is only one spirit. There is only one law. There is only one creative principle, and that is God. So what can be here except God and the effects of God? Nothing. Now then, the first thing that must take place is we must be hypnotized into saying, no, there are men and women in the room. Once we have been made to say that, we have got to say they were born, that they mature, that they age, that they get sick, that they sin, that they have babies, that they grow old, and in the end, they all die. Do you see that? Now, how can you stop birth and death as long as you have people to be born and to die? You can't do it. You have got to be unhypnotized or dehypnotized so that you can see that God is the only presence and the only power, the only life, and the only mind. So that when you hear about a birth or a death, when you hear about a sin or a disease, you can say to yourself, thank heavens, I am not hypnotized. I know there is only God. The minute you see God and you are hypnotized. The moment you see a mortal, material world, you are hypnotized. From then on, there is no way to get rid of it. That is the reason that if you do kill the snake over here, you are going to find two more to take its place. That is why, in all the years of materia medica, everybody still dies. Everybody who is born dies. They do and they will. At best, they may live a few more years. That is all. And those few years have been added not so much by medicines as such as they have by the discovery of better ways to keep babies alive. People still die of pneumonia. People still die of tuberculosis. They still die of cancer. They still die of heart failure. More than ever with heart, more than ever with cancer. Do you see what I'm getting at? And it wouldn't make any difference if they stopped those. Something else would take its place. Now then, if you can agree that there is a God, which means that you are agreeing that there is an infinite power of good, if you can agree on that, you certainly must agree that there cannot be error, there cannot be disease, there cannot be death. So then, whatever we behold in the nature of sin, disease, or death, whatever you behold as good humanhood is a part of hypnosis. You understand, of course, that a healthy human of 30 is someday going to be an old human of 70 or 80. Do you see what I mean? You are just being fooled by a separate appearance of good. Until you are so dehypnotized that you know that there are not good humans or bad humans, there are not diseased humans or healthy humans, there is only God, the one life, the one mind, the one soul, the one spirit, the one substance, the one law, the one activity. Until then, you have to die. Study well the chapter, The New Horizon in the Infinite Way. Never let this chapter get stale. Never neglect this chapter. It is for you who are advanced enough to understand a principle of life, not mere blind faith in an unknown God. Now, you can never get unhypnotized as long as you are judging by appearances, because the thing you are judging with, the human mind, is the state of hypnotism. In other words, in looking out from your eyes, you are looking out from a state of hypnosis. The only way you can be dehypnotized is when the 5 physical senses are quiet and you are still inside of you. And then spiritual awareness reveals to you the truth of being. In other words, your eyes are always going to see babies being born and old people die. Your ears are always going to be hearing about sin, disease, lack, death, and limitation. And you are always going to see, hear, taste, touch, and smell error. So until you shut that 5 senses off and develop this inner thing that enables you to say, I see that which is not visible. I hear that which is not audible. I know that which is not knowable with the human senses. I suppose I could describe it this way. If a person with no musical appreciation heard a symphony, what would he hear? A lot of dull, monotonous noises. A person with a musical consciousness listens to it and hears harmony, melody, rhythm. Or take a person who has no art appreciation, who looks at an oil painting. What does he see? Daubs of paint. That is all. Nothing more, nothing less. Just daubs of paint that do not make sense. Now a person comes along with an art appreciation and he sees whatever it is that the artist had in mind. The execution and the coloring and the shading and so forth and so on. A person who knows nothing of sculpture What does he see? A piece of bronze or a piece of marble made into a statue, and that's all that it is. Usually a very poor likeness at that. The person with an artistic sense looks at it and he sees the skill. He sees the line, the form. He sees the rhythm. He sees the flow in the artist's mind and hands in it. Do you see that? Then they are not seeing just with their eyes, are they? They are seeing through their art ability or through their musical appreciation. In the same way, if you look through your eyes at this world, all you will ever see are human beings, sometimes good, sometimes bad. You've heard me say this before. The same woman who promises to love, honor, and obey puts her husband in jail for alimony later. Good one day and bad the next. The couple that loves each other to death one day drives daggers into each other's heart the next day. The parent that fondles the child one day often finds the child turn on him the next day. It is the human picture, sometimes good, always error. Now then, that is what you always see, taste, touch, and smell with the 5 physical senses. So you will never get to understand your symphony or your painting or your sculpture until you develop that art capacity. And you will never get to know the spiritual universe until you develop that inner spiritual consciousness, that which is called Christ consciousness, which enabled Jesus to say to Pilate, who had the greatest temporal power of his day, "Thou couldst have no power." How could he say that in the face of the temporal power that Pilate had? He was seeing through to something beyond what the eyes can see or the ears could hear. He was knowing something that the human mind couldn't know. And he proved it when he allowed himself to be crucified and they could not kill him. In other words, Pilate and the crucifix and the sword had no power. Now then, dehypnotization is the ability to see that which actually is, or the ability to taste, touch, and smell that which actually is. The only way that it can be accomplished is through that spiritual consciousness. Then, to have some evidence that we are getting dehypnotized, we must first of all be able to know this. You cannot cure a disease, there isn't any. You cannot overcome poverty, there isn't any. You cannot overcome death, there isn't any. The only thing you can do is to recognize, I am not dealing with those appearances. I am not dealing with such suggestions. I am dealing with hypnotism. Do not see sin and do not see disease. Remember that you are dealing not with sin and not with disease and not with sinners, but rather with a false appearance produced by the belief of a selfhood apart from God, a universal belief so powerful that it operates as law in our consciousness until we detect it and cast it out, until we know the truth. You remember, of course, the illustration of the mirage on the desert. You are driving along and suddenly you see water on the road, and perhaps you stop your car quickly. As you sit there and gaze at the road ahead of you, glance about you, all of a sudden you realize it isn't water, it is a mirage. And then you start your car and drive on. You haven't removed the water from the road. There wasn't any. You merely recognized that what appeared as water on the road was a mirage, and you paid no further attention to it. The water never was there. But what would happen if you would treat the mirage as if it actually were water? You would stay there and wait for somebody to come and siphon it off. It has to be siphoned off. It has to be gotten off the road, as long as you think of it as water. The moment you understand it as mirage, it doesn't bother you any longer, does it? And so it is with error. As long as you can be made to treat a person, or a condition, or a sin, or a disease, or a cause of disease, you will be trying to remove the water from the road. It was in one of these tapes that I said that you have got to see that the so-called mental cause is just as much of an illusion as the physical disease. In some studies, it is claimed that there is a mental cause for a physical disease. If that is so, the disease is no illusion, since it has a real cause. We, in the infinite way, must recognize that even a mental cause is as much of an illusion as the physical disease, since all there is to the human scene, all there is to what we understand as this world, is in the nature of the illusion. Truth is infinite God or infinite mind and its creation, and there is nothing else. The mental cause is as illusory in its nature as the physical effect. To understand reality, you must understand that only spirit is real, since spirit is infinite. Then all that exists must exist at the standpoint of spirit under spiritual law. And so we are not dealing with physical effects or mental causes. We are dealing only with God manifesting and expressing itself and its infinite harmonies. And as opposed to that, an appearance, a suggestion, a claim, a universal belief of a selfhood apart from God, of a universe apart from God, of a selfhood and a universe subject to material and mental laws. Can you believe that there is God and a sickness too? No. How could you believe any such thing? Where would God be while somebody is suffering? Why, we as human parents would never let a child have a disease if we could prevent it or take it away from him. Would we let a child suffer? No, you know better than that. Then why do you think God would let it happen to us? It can't be. There is no such thing. Never in the history of the world has there been a sick person or a dead one. Everybody who has ever lived from the time of the beginning of all time is still alive. It couldn't be otherwise. Otherwise, you have to be an atheist. Otherwise, you would have to say the world sprang up out of dust and it's going to return to dust. But you can't do that. While you see a law of life begetting life, while you see apples always coming from apple trees or cabbages always coming from cabbage patches, you know it can't be accidental. There must be a law. As long as you can see that 2 times 2 must always be 4, you know that this is not an accidental world. There must be a principle behind it. Do you follow that? If there is a principle, that is God. If there is a principle, is there an exception to the principle? 2 times 2 are 4 always, and you never heard of any exception to it. And you never heard of anything growing on apple trees but apples, or orange trees but oranges. Do you see what I mean? There is no exception to prove the rule, is there? So we know there is a principle governing the universe. And because there is a principle, a law, a divine law, nothing ever got outside of its government or control. Not any more than do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do of music. Nothing ever got out of control there. They have never changed values. They have never changed positions with each other. No one note ever crowded the other off the scale. No one note ever infringed upon the other. No one note ever took anything away from the other. So it is with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, ought. They never get out of their rightful places. Not one of them ever took anything from one of the others. Not one ever crowded the other out or drew from another. Cooperated together, yes, for the common good. Well, if that is true of mathematics and true of music, how can it be otherwise than true of man who was given dominion over mathematics and music? So, there never has been a man who crowded another man off the earth. There never has been a man who crowded another man out of his business. There never has been a politician who crowded another politician out. Never. All those pictures are hypnotism. And if you can be made to believe that there is a mortal material universe, you are part of this hypnotism. When you close your eyes, as you go further into this work, at the point of meditation, where we really get to the point above this world, then you will know me as I am, and I will know you as you are. That is how healings take place, because I can know you as you are, and do not judge you as you appear to be. That is why I say to our students, do not tell anybody that they must correct themselves. Do not refuse a case because they do not seem to be doing what you think is right. That has nothing to do with you. You get inside and behold them as God made them, and then they will soon conform to the pattern shown thee on the mount. Do you see? Therefore, I never say that the error is yours or that you must correct something. No, the error is hypnotism, a universal hypnotism, and I am the one who has to correct it through the understanding one with God is a majority. Therefore, the moment you turn to a practitioner and that practitioner knows the truth for you, that one is the majority. That breaks the spell. Now, of course, Jesus said, go and sin no more. In other words, the practitioner can bring you out of the mesmerism, but you can soon get yourself back in again. If you do not conform to the higher vision, nothing is going to stop you from going right back into the same disease or another one. Yes, he said, neither do I condemn you, but go and sin no more. In other words, I release you, and I am giving you your freedom through my understanding of your spiritual nature. Do not go back and make a fool out of it now by indulging in mortality again. Do you understand that? That is why you can have marvelous healings through practitioners. But if you do not turn around and change your mode of life, if you go back and sin again, and of course, the world misunderstands the word sin. The word sin doesn't mean just getting drunk or committing adultery or stealing. There is a lot more to sin than that. Just going back to the belief that there are human beings is the sin that puts you back in your diseases and sins again. In our work, sin doesn't mean the same thing. In other words, what the world might call sin, stealing, lying, cheating, adultery, that to us is of the same nature as disease. It is just another form of hypnotism. Sin is the acceptance of a material universe. That is the sin. And once you have been freed from it, to go back to it again, that is your fault. Neither do I condemn thee, but go and sin no more. Do not go back into the mesmerism again. Do you see what I mean? That is why I say, and that is what I have said in one of these tapes, when you go through hell on this path, the principle is with you, and it is going to get you out. But do not think that there is any difference between the hell called poverty, the hell called war, the hell called disease, or the hell called sin. Do not think that one of them is a worse form than another. Oh no. They are all forms of one thing, and that one thing is hypnotism. In one man's case, hypnotism appears as some sinful thing or thought. In another's, it appears as a diseased thing or thought. And still another's, it appears as poverty. It doesn't make any difference. It is all hypnotism. Take away the hypnotism, and none of these things would be there. So there you are with the nature of error. There is only one error, and that is hypnotism. But if you can be made to give a treatment to a person, or if you can be made to treat them for nerves, for a mental cause, for a physical disease, or if you can be made to treat them for resentment or hate or jealousy or anger or if you can be made to treat them for cancer or consumption, you are out of the practice. You are in materia medica. You are treating effects, and I do not care whether the effect is a sin or a disease or poverty. You are treating an effect, and if you did get rid of it, two more effects would show up. Unless you get at the root of the trouble, unless you lay the axe at the root of the tree, which is hypnotism, you do not come out of the mortal, the material state of consciousness. When you see through hypnotism, then, regardless of the name or nature of the sin, disease, or lack, your patient or student realizes harmony, health, wholeness, completeness. If his trouble is nerves, he finds himself rid of nerves. If his belief has been unemployment, he finds himself employed. If his claim has been disease, he finds himself well. Why? Through the practitioner's ability to see through the claim of hypnotism and realize God as the principle of all that is. This is one reason that even some who have gone through classes do not understand the nature of error. So often it is brought up, and more especially before there is a readiness for it, and the student believes that the hypnotism, the suggestion, the appearance, the claim is actually an error to be destroyed. It is for this reason that we hear such expressions as, "Look what mortal mind is doing to me," when actually mortal mind, as Mrs. Eddy defined the term, is one meaning nothingness, that which has no existence. How can it then do something to one? And of course, hypnotism isn't an actual thing or condition. Hypnotism cannot produce water on the desert or snakes in the plant. Hypnotism is itself no thing, no form, no cause, and no effect. Merely to recognize any form of error, any appearance of error as hypnotism, is the correct handling of it without any further concern. If you have been able to, with your inner ear, hear what I have said, if you really understand what I have said, you will be ready for this next point. At this point, I would like the students listening to meditate and ponder this idea of hypnotism as the substance of any form of mortal or material universe that is appearing to them. In other words, even when you see the mountains, the sunshine, the ocean, the beauty, remember that these two are forms of hypnotism only appearing to you as good forms. In the same way, when you see sin, disease, death, lack, and limitation, remember that the same hypnotism is presenting negative, or what we call evil forms. Now, this does not mean that we are not to enjoy the good of human existence, but rather that we are to enjoy it for what it is, not something real in and of itself, since the reality, that which underlies our beautiful mountains and streams and sunsets and sunrises and pleasures and joys, is spiritual and must be spiritually discerned, but rather that we enjoy them, knowing them to be temporary forms of good, not something to be stored up, not something to be put in bank vaults, but to be enjoyed, and then go on each day letting the manna fall afresh. The main thing to remember is that when confronted with the negative aspects of hypnotism, that is, forms of sin, disease, lack, and limitation, not to be fooled by them, not to be fooled into trying to reform evil persons or sinful persons, but always quickly remembering, oh no, hypnotism appearing in still more forms, hypnotism which in and of itself cannot be the substance, law, cause, or effect to any form of reality. And thereby you become a spiritual healer. Do you see, the world is so hypnotized by person, place, and thing that a good person, a good place, and a good thing become so nice and comfortable that everybody wants them. And they don't want to get any higher than that because they are so very comfortable. It can't be done. Because you see, no matter how good you get it, it has its other side, and it goes up and it goes down. So again I say this to you. If you can be made to treat person, place, or thing, if you can be made to fear a war, a depression, an atomic bomb, you are hypnotized. And it is only a question then of what the date is on the tombstone. There will be one. It is just a matter of which date it is. If, however, you catch this vision, when the time comes that you want to step out, you will step out into a transitional experience which will be higher and better than this one. But there is where the healing work is. You can't treat a person. You can't treat a condition. It would be like treating the water on the desert and trying to get rid of it when it isn't there. It would be like trying to treat the snakes up there and saying, you have got to get rid of my 3 snakes. As soon as you get rid of my 3 snakes, I'll be able to study better. Do you see how foolish it is? There aren't any snakes there. So you are never going to get rid of them. Get rid of the hypnotism. You won't have to study anymore. Because the only purpose of studying truth is to learn that hypnotism is the only error. When you learn that, there is nothing to study. The rest is lived within your own being. That is all there is. You see, in the same way, when you are dealing with error, the minute you try to touch a disease or condition, you would be in the mess, because there is no such thing as a disease or a condition apart from the mesmerism, the hypnotism, the appearance or suggestion or claim. So to be fooled into handling the condition would be to make the whole thing worse. Now, it is in the same way with those who are reading or studying, or who are taking up truth or using truth for a healing, or for supply, or for a demonstration. The more their minds are on the getting rid of the condition, or the more their minds are on getting a healing, the more they are in the mirage of error. Because again, you see, there isn't any demonstration to get. There is only one demonstration, and that is getting the realization of God. If you had the realization of God, you would have the whole thing. You would have health, harmony, wholeness, eternality, immortality, infinity. You would have supply, and you would have immortal life, eternality. The only thing you can do there, too, is you cannot make a demonstration of a home or a companion or a divorce or a job. You can only make a demonstration of the presence of God, and then that would include whatever the nature of the demonstration is to be. Just like in realizing hypnotism, it would include the demonstration of getting rid of the water on the road, or the snake on the wall, or the cancer, wouldn't it? But you couldn't get rid of them separate and apart from getting over the hypnotism, could you? In the same way, neither could you get the demonstration of home, employment, or health separate and apart from getting the consciousness of God. Because there is no demonstration of good separate and apart from the demonstration of God. Do you see that? So it works both ways, doesn't it? On the side of error, there is no use of treating person, place, or thing, because there is only one fact to error, and that is hypnotism. On the positive side, there is no use of seeking a demonstration of person, thing, or condition, because there isn't any demonstration separate and apart from the realization of God. The realization of God includes all demonstration. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. The thing for us to know is this, that it is necessary to demonstrate the consciousness of the presence of God, and the other things are included in it. So you have your demonstration. It is the same on the positive side as on the negative. On the positive side, it is demonstrating the consciousness of the presence of God. On the negative side, it is realizing no matter what the form of error is, it is only hypnotism. Therefore, it has no substance, no law, no cause, no reality, no effect. These are the two sides of the picture. This is going to be helpful on both the positive side and the negative side. Remember that the entire basis of the Infinite Way teaching is that there is not God and. There is not God and health, or God and strength, or God and immortality, or God and activity, or God and supply. There is only God manifesting as. In other words, we use the example of a block of mahogany, and out of this we have a chair and a table and a dresser and a bench. Now you haven't got mahogany and a table and a chair and a bench. You have mahogany manifested or expressed as those things. So when you think of God as the substance of the universe, you haven't got God, the substance, and a lot of forms. You have God appearing or formed as those forms, manifested and expressed as forms. And that is why if you demonstrate God, you demonstrate every form as which God appears. You demonstrate God as health, as harmony, immortality, supply. Do you see that? That is why you cannot demonstrate God and these things. And that is why you cannot demonstrate these things separate and apart from God, because they are all God itself formed. Now, if you see that, apply that also to this idea of all error as hypnotism. There is not hypnotism and a disease. There is not hypnotism and lack and limitation. There is not hypnotism and sin and death. There is only hypnotism appearing as these pictures, so that you can't get rid of the sin, disease, or death separate and apart from hypnotism. But when you have gotten rid of hypnotism, you have gotten rid of all the various forms. And the way to get rid of hypnotism is to understand hypnotism not as thing, but as no thing, no power, no presence. I said that you would now see the secret of living. And here you have that secret of living. When you observe life as it appears to be, as you see, hear, taste, touch, or smell it, you understand immediately that this is the product of hypnotism, of suggestion, of human appearance. Of course, you understand through your spiritual sense. You would discern right there where this material or physical sense seems to be, you would discern right there the spiritual, eternal, and immortal creation. Watch this, because this concerns the healing work. If you were to see a so-called evil appearance, sinful appearance, sick appearance, dying or dead appearance, you would be tempted immediately to know some truth or to think some thought that would change the picture, that would heal, correct, improve, or reform it. Whereas, if you saw normal human good, normal human health, harmony, wholeness, prosperity, you would just accept the picture at its face value. Now watch this. When you come into a state of life wherein you can look at the harmonious human appearance and recognize it as hypnotism and appearance or suggestion, and when you can look at the inharmonious or discordant human picture and recognize it as the product of the same hypnotism or suggestion, then you have come to a point in consciousness in which you will not try to improve, heal, or correct the erroneous picture, nor indulge in satisfaction over the harmonious picture. The reason is that you will know through your spiritual sense that regardless of the picture or its appearance, or the nature of its appearance, right there, spiritual reality and harmony is. Eternal and immortal being is. And so you will make no mental effort at correcting, healing, or improving. And with that ability to refrain from all attempt to heal, correct, or improve, you will have demonstrated the consciousness of God's allness. In my writings, you will find this handled under the subject of reaction. And I have said that healing takes place in proportion to the practitioner's reaction to the appearance. This is exactly what I meant. If you can know that harmonious human appearances are no more real than inharmonious or discordant ones, if you can know that inharmonious, discordant, sick, sinful, dying human appearances are no more real than harmonious and healthful human appearances, then you have arrived at a state of consciousness that spiritually discerns harmony right where any form of human appearance may be. Now, get used to the idea of observing the harmonious human appearances and the inharmonious human appearances with the same degree of unconcern. Then you will know that you have arrived at a state of spiritual consciousness in which you now see that which is invisible, hear that which is inaudible, and know that which is unknowable, and this is Christ consciousness. Here now you have a message for serious contemplation and meditation. Blessings and aloha, Joel.